If you're watching this video, then you clearly want to know what the best Pokemon fighting game is, and no, it's not Pokken Tournament. It's Pokemon Close Combat, a fan-made arcade fighter Pokemon game. Now, this isn't gonna be a normal game review because there's not really the typical story elements and stuff that would be in a traditional Pokemon game. There are 3 different ways to play the game, but before you do that, you have to pick your Pokemon, and before you do that, you have to decide if you want to solo or multiplayer this game, and before that, you have to subscribe to Quoorn's Quest right here on YouTube. Now let's get into this game review of Pokemon Close Combat. So like I said, this game is very much an arcade street style-esque video game. It was obviously heavily inspired by those types of classic games you see in arcades, so much so that even the controls are in the style of a single joystick and the 6 buttons you would see on an arcade fighter game, which is really cool, but it does come with a little bit of difficulty when you're trying to figure that out on your keyboard or on your controller you have plugged in to your PC or whatever device you're using. But the overall game is really cool in just the general style and artistic choices of the game, because it looks like a Street Fighter game. It looks like a classic arcade game where you're just on a flat platform. The characters are just 2D, very simple back and forth kind of animations, and the animations are super smooth. Like, it looks phenomenal, even if you're not into 2D games anymore because we live in the world of 3D. But it's very nostalgic, and if it's not nostalgic to you, it should hopefully feel very new and fresh compared to, again, this 3D world of video games we live in. Alright, now it's time to break down the actual game. So when you first boot up the game, it's going to ask you if you want to solo or multiplayer this game, which is really cool because there are capabilities for playing online, at least playing on the same device with other people. I have not tested that out yet, but in the Discord for this game where you can get the download, it comes with a bunch of rules and it comes with a bunch of like explainers and tips as well, so you can hopefully figure out how to play with your friends either locally or on Wi-Fi connection. But I played the solo version, which was more like your typical kind of like just storyline or like gameplay type of stuff. So once you decide if you want to go solo or multiplayer, you then go into your character selection. And I think the character selection for this game is absolutely fantastic. They only use fighting type Pokemon, but not mono fighting types only. And so far, it's 1 Pokemon from every generation. And I have to say, the selections they used were fantastic, because obviously you'd think that the main ones would be like your Hitmonchans, Hitmonlees, Hitmontops, pretty much that whole like line, because they're literally based off real fighters. Or Machamp, because in every single fighting Pokemon depiction, we see Machamp. But we don't see Machamp in this game, and that actually makes me very happy. The Gen 1 representation is Primeape, which I think is super unique, and that continues along the lines for the rest of the generations. Blaziken is one of the few that feels very on the nose, just because it's a very well-known and well-liked fighting Pokemon. But then you get into Generation 4, where you have Toxicroak with some cool movesets, and then once you get to Generation 9, they totally throw you into left field, and they give you Great Tusk, because Great Tusk is technically a fighting Pokemon, and yeah, you can play as a rolling giant prehistoric elephant, and if that doesn't make this game amazing, I don't know what will. But if your favorite fighting type Pokemon did not make the cut, I'll give you a little bit of insight as to probably why these Pokemon were initially chosen. So all these Pokemon have kind of unique, like I said, Street Fighter-esque battle styles to them, where you have some Pokemon that are very good at close range combat. So you have like your punching guys, which is more like a Great Tusk. And then you have some Pokemon that are really good for long range attacks. That's where you're looking at Toxicroak that can actually spit poison bubbles and poison bombs at the opponent to keep them at a safe distance from you. And you even have your grappling fighters, such as Phalanx, where you can actually throw out your other companions and grapple the opponent back into your clutches, where you can deal a lot of heavy hits. It's really cool in that sense, because it's not just your typical like button mash, yeah, punch. Like, they all have very unique playstyles to them, and it just like kind of creates this own like meta for it of like, you might be really good at using grappling Pokemon, you might be really good at using long range Pokemon because you're maybe not quick enough or you don't know the best strategies for those close range Pokemon. And of course, you can even use shiny Pokemon in this game. It is completely random. You do not get some sort of character customization outside of picking your Pokemon, but on the off chance you play for a long time like I did, you will run into shiny opponents as well as your selected Pokemon being shiny. So the Pokemon are super cool in this game and they all have very unique fighting styles that I think is fantastic. And now let's get into how this game actually works. So when you're in the solo mode, you then have, after you've picked your Pokemon, 3 different options you can do for your actual gameplay. You have something that's a little bit more like a traditional arcade style game where you pick your Pokemon and then you have to fight each of the other Pokemon in the roster until you've defeated them all, and then you are champion, congratulations type of thing. And that's really cool because every Pokemon you pick has a different lineup. I don't know if it's based off of like some kind of difficulty or not, but I mean, obviously the first Pokemon you go up against is going to be relatively easy, and then they just increase their difficulty levels, but it's not like you're always going to go in the same order. So if you choose Great Tusk, you might run into Primeape first. If you pick something like a Toxicroak, you might run into Heracross first. It kind of just depends on the Pokemon you pick, but I think they are relatively consistent in that sense of the Pokemon have a set line that they will fight. Again, I don't know the exact like reasoning for this, but luckily they do level scale, so if you want to just get really good at one Pokemon, you will just keep battling the same Pokemon over and over again, but then you can kind of switch it up by choosing a different Pokemon, and I think that's really cool because it just kind of obviously like gets you out of your comfort zone. Instead of just getting really good at one Pokemon and only playing one Pokemon and maybe getting bored with just playing by yourself, you actually can like test out other Pokemon. And speaking of testing out Pokemon, there is a third option at the bottom. I'm skipping to that one because that's the one where you actually get to fight a Wobbuffet. It will throw moves at you, it will regenerate health. You get to use it as a punching bag because it's like, again, your punching bag test dummy. The Wobbuffet just keeps taking the hits, it regenerates health, but you can defeat it once you start getting your combos down and once you really start knowing how to deal tons and tons of damage. But it's awesome because it's not going to always be attacking you, so you actually get some time to figure out your moves and figure out what works best for you and the Pokemon you chose. And then finally, there's a second playthrough option. I don't really know what this one is about. I couldn't get it to work when I was playing it. I'm sure I'm missing something, or maybe that's for multiplayer only. I'm not quite sure, but there are 3 different ways to play it. You have your traditional story, your training mode, and then something in the middle. I'm not quite sure what that one is, but I'm sure it's just as fun. But overall, Pokémon Close Combat is a fantastic fan game, and I would highly recommend checking it out. If you want to check it out, the link to the Discord where you can download the game and all the instructions is down in the description, along with the like button and everything else down there, such as the subscribe button if you want to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on more Quoorn's quests and more game review videos. But overall, again, the game is fantastic. It's super fun. I got lost in it for 2 hours when I was just testing it out, and I'm itching to play more of it. It's definitely going to be added to my stream roster, so check out my live streams as well, and maybe there'll be a Pokemon Close Combat tournament type of thing or something like that. But even if you don't tune into that kind of stuff, I hope you play it with your friends. I hope you enjoy playing it yourself. I don't know a lot of the downsides to it, aside from the controls being a little weird because they used your classic arcade style games, again with the single Joy-Con and the 6 buttons. It's a little confusing to figure out because I was playing on my PS4 controller. Some people will play on their keyboards, and they do show you what those buttons correlate to on some devices, and on the controller you can set your buttons to kind of make sense, but I'm sure there's also just like a learning gap for me because I didn't grow up playing these games too much. But overall, it's a very nostalgic game, super fun to play, and I hope everyone checks out Pokemon Close Combat. Again, you can download it in the description. You can join their Discord where they have tournaments and a bunch of other stuff, and let me know what you think down in the comments about Pokemon Close Combat. Are you excited for this game where you can play a Pokemon Street Fighter game, or do you still think Pokémon Tournament is better than this game? I'll give you a hint. This is way better than Pokémon Tournament. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, happy questing, y'all.